My name is Brandon Ballard, and this is a presentation of Chapter 6 from Organizational Behavior by Stephen McShane. This chapter is about decision making and creativity. The learning objectives for this chapter are to describe the rational choice paradigm, explain why people differ from the rational choice paradigm when identifying problems, opportunities, or evaluating and choosing alternatives, and evaluating decision outcomes. To discuss roles of emotions and intuition in decision making, to describe the benefits of employee involvement, and identify four contingencies that affect the optimal level of employee involvement, and describe employee characteristics, workplace conditions, and specific activities that support creativity. We make decisions every day from what to eat or what to wear. There are also decisions made in organizations every day that can lead to exponential growth or demise. To achieve the former, a proper decision-making process should be employed. Decision-making is the process of making choices among alternatives with the intention of moving towards some desired state of affairs. The rational choice paradigm, which is the view in decision-making that people should and typically do use logic and all available information to choose the alternative with the highest value or subjective expected utility, which is the probability of satisfaction, resulting from choosing a specific alternative. The six steps in the rational choice decision making process are: identify the problem or recognize an opportunity, choose how to process the decision, develop a list of possible alternatives, choose the best alternative, implement the selected alternative, and evaluate the outcomes. One of the main reasons the seemingly logical process is extremely difficult to implement is that it assumes that people are efficient in logical processing information, but have problems identifying problems because processing information to make a solution and have a hard time admitting failure. Second, it completely ignores the emotion, which we all know are a large part in the decisions that we make. Many believe correctly identifying the problem may be the most important part of the decision-making process, which may be why it's also considered the most difficult. Some problems include stakeholder framing, which is essentially biases being formed and attached to emotions by stakeholders who will affect and be affected by a decision. Mental models of how things it should be based on preconceived notions can block us at times from seeing unique problems or opportunities because they produce a negative evaluation of things dissimilar to the mental model. Decisive leadership can sometimes announce problems or opportunities before properly evaluating the situation in an effort to look effective. Another problem is solution-focused problems, where you actually define problems as a veiled solution. Last is perceptual defense, which is where the brain blocks out bad news or refuses to see information that threatens the self-concept. Some ways to identify problems more effectively include the awareness of these biases, that this motivates decision makers to consider other perspectives. Resist the temptation of attempting to look effective, and take the time to analyze the situation to identify the problem properly. And there's divine discontent, which is never being satisfied with the status quo. And last, collaboration. Two heads are always better than one. According to the rational choice paradigm, people rely on logic to evaluate and choose alternatives. Scholar Herbert Simon argued that conversely, people tend to engage in bounded reality instead, which is the view that people are bounded in their decision-making capabilities, including access to limited information processing, and tendency towards satisfying instead of maximizing. As we see, sometimes what the rational choice paradigm assumptions and what the actual observations are a little different. For example, the rational choice paradigm assumes goals are clear, compatible, and agreed upon. whereas the observations from organizational behavior are that goals are ambiguous, are in conflict, and lack full support. Another example is the rational choice paradigm assumes that decision makers evaluate all alternatives simultaneously, when in actuality, decision makers evaluate alternatives sequentially. Last, another example is the paradigm assumes that decision makers use factual information to choose alternatives, when in actuality, decision makers process perceptually distorted information. Rational choice paradigm assume that organizations are clear and agreed upon when in fact they're ambiguous. Rational choice also makes assumptions about human capacity to process information that are problematic. It assumes that decision makers can process information about all alternatives and consequences when it virtually is impossible, leading to the concept of implicit favor, where a new alternative is compared to an alternative that the decision maker prefers. This occurs a lot with brand names. The main problem with maximization is satisficing or choosing an alternative that is higher on the satisfactory rating. A major difference between problem solving and finding an opportunity is that decision maker does not evaluate different alternatives because the opportunity is the alternative when evaluating opportunities. Decision makers have an emotional attachment as it usually comes as an exciting time or rare revelation. Again, rational choice neglects the effects of emotions on decision making. Emotions affect evaluation of alternatives in three ways. Emotions form early preferences, which means it attaches specific emotions to information about each alternative. Emotions change the decision evaluation process, meaning moods and specific emotions influence the process of evaluation, i.e., if you're feeling lucky one day, you may pick a more risky alternative than normal. Thirdly, emotions serve as information. This comes in where marketing plays to our emotions and that guides us in making a purchasing decision. Intuition also plays a role in making choices. Intuition is the ability to know when a problem or opportunity exists and select the best course of action without reasoning. This involves rapidly comparing observations with deeply held patterns learned through experience. Intuition relies on action scripts or programmed decision routines that speed up our response to pattern matches or mismatches, shortening the overall decision making process. Three ways that we can make choices more effectively include combining intuition with analysis. Having a gut feeling is important, but it should always have reliable and relevant data calculated in when making a final decision. Remembering that decisions are influenced by rational and emotional processes will cause you to revisit certain issues and reevaluate and verify the decision made was in the correct state of mind. Lastly, there is scenario planning, where you can imagine possible futures. This is helpful in forecasting situations. Most people have a hard time when admitting they are wrong, and that leads us into the evaluation of the decision outcomes and the problems that can arise. We all downplay the negatives in the decisions we make and pump up the positives. The technical term for this is called confirmation bias. In close relation, people often exhibit escalation of commitment, which is repeating an apparently bad decision or allocating more resources to a failing course of action, usually digging a deeper hole. OB scholars have identified four main reasons this happens. First, we have self-justification. This especially happens when someone's name is tied to a project and they don't want to ruin their reputation. Individuals maintain their course of action. Next, there is the prospect theory effect, meaning we are willing to take more risks to avoid losses than to increase gains. Third, we have a perceptual bias. For example, decision makers not seeing problems soon enough by non-consciously screening out negative information. Last is closing costs, which tend to be high and cause decision makers to attempt to avoid at all costs. Some ways to evaluate effectively are the people who are making decisions are not the people who evaluate them. So you get a trustworthy evaluation. You should establish a preset level of abandonment. When you meet it, the decision or the decision alternative that was selected is abandoned, and you go back to the drawing board. You should always have a systematic and clear feedback system where people can give their comments on how well the solution is working. And lastly, again, collaboration. Two heads are always better than one. Getting outside help never hurts. Gets a new set of eyes on the situation. Employee involvement in decision making is very important in any organization. Employee involvement is the degree to which employees influence how their work is organized and carried out. This is also called participative management. This can range from asking employees for information to asking for recommendations on a problem to the employees handling the whole decision-making process at the highest level. Benefits for employee involvement include better problem identification because they experience the problem sooner than executives higher up. There are more choices. Again, two heads, three heads are better than one. More people, more choices, more alternative solutions. Then you also have the collaboration to pick the best alternative. You have more perspectives and diversity and ideas. Last, there's a strong commitment as the people, as the employees are involved in the decision-making process, feel personally responsible to make sure that the decision that was selected is successful. Employee involvement does depend on the situation, and there are four contingencies that will judge how or if employee involvement is needed. The first is the decision structure. This is basically program versus non-program decision. If you have a program decision structure, the rules or the guidelines already laid out, you may not lead in as much employee involvement. Secondly, is the source of the decision knowledge. The employee should be involved when less information about the decision is as known by the leadership than the employee. A great example of this is a customer service issue or policy where the manager does not directly deal with customers. In this case, the employees will be better served to be involved in the decision-making process because it directly affects them. Decision commitment. This participation by the employee in the decision-making process leads to better commitment, again, because the employee feels a little more responsibility as they help make the choice. And the last contingency is the risk of conflict, which has two types of conflict. Whether the employee goals conflict with the organizational goals, in that case, that will be problematic, as well as if the employee will likely agree with the solution. Because if not, employee involvement will prove difficult. When making decisions within organizations, especially when it comes to the innovation, the value of creativity can be immeasurable. Creativity is the development of original ideas that make a socially recognizable contribution. Creativity shows up in all stages of the decision-making process. The most influential model for creativity has four stages. Preparation, which is the effort put into acquiring knowledge or skills regarding the problem or opportunity. Next, there is incubation, which is the period of reflective thought. This is the stage where divergent thinking occurs, where you reframe the problem in a unique way to generate different approaches to the problem. The third stage is insight, which is essentially the light bulb, or the flicker of light as the author states, comes on and you become aware of a new and unique idea. The last stage is verification or evaluation, where you verify your new idea. People who are highly creative have four main common characteristics. They have high cognitive and practical intelligence. This is how they synthesize and analyze ideas and evaluate their usefulness. Next is persistence. it is present and highly creative people. They have high levels of confidence and esteem that allows them to stay with the project even when problems occur and even when urged to quit. Third, they have subject knowledge and experience and allows the ability to create reasonable hypotheses and innovations in the field. Last is the low need for affiliation. Strong values and self-stimulation and self-direction are traits lending itself to having independent imagination. Some organization conditions that can support creativity include a learning orientation, which is allowing for mistakes in the creative process, motivation from leadership, sufficient resources, and authority or autonomy. Activities an organization can use to support creativity include redefining the problem, which include asking people with little knowledge for help, which gives a new way of looking at a problem. There is associated play, i.e., art classes and impromptu storytelling to stimulate creativity. The third type of activity that can help with creativity from an organization is cross-pollination, which is exactly what it sounds like. People from different areas of the organization sharing ideas. A common thread throughout this entire lesson is that collaboration with others, both in your department and in other departments of the organization, stimulate creativity as well as lead to better decision making and getting a better solution for the overall process. This concludes my presentation of Chapter 6. Thank you.